So we're going to jump into our next movie of the week. A mixed bag, in my opinion. I know I described the last one as a mixed bag, and I'll go ahead and do it here as well. This is Banana Split, co-written by Hannah Marks and Joey Power, who last worked together on After Everything back in 2018. I don't know if you saw that. It had Marissa Tomei in it. This is the directorial debut of cinematographer Benjamin Kazuk, or Kazuk, I don't know, Kasulke. Maybe that's what we should do. We should start spelling names instead of trying to butcher and mispronounce them. I feel bad because, like I was saying, I try looking up interviews and I can get a feel of who the director is, and I can also hear what their last names are. But a lot of times it's on red carpets and you just don't get, "Hey, Benjamin Kazuk, how are you?" And you don't get that, So this movie also stars Marks as a young woman named April, and the movie kicks off with a montage basically showing her first love, her first relationship, the ups and downs, the very deep downs, and it's a 7-minute sequence that takes place over 2 years. She's dating this guy named Nick, played by Dylan Sprouse from the Zack and Cody series, who is sporting when I did my written review, I described it as a Fabio-like mane, very glorious long hair. It's almost impressive. But anyway, it super ups and downs as any relationship goes. You get the hymen breaking, you get the bottle breaking almost fights. It's a mess, and their biggest fight comes when they decide to go to cross-country colleges. They live in LA. She decides to go to Boston for college while he wants to stay in the mid or the South California area. I think maybe he went to UCLA. I don't remember which college exactly. The point is, they're going to split up. And so they decide to just rip the Band-Aid off, and right before the end of the school year, they decide to call it quits. In a sort of, it was almost too real of a breakup sequence for me to handle, and it was, because they didn't say anything. They were just sitting there awkwardly, like they didn't want to hurt the other person. I'm gonna start crying. I don't.
Oh no!
I know it was hard. It was hard to handle. Anyway, the movie takes place primarily. There's a timeline. It's 89 days until orientation. I.e. the day April has to leave and go to Boston and leave California behind. It's obviously not forever, but, for all intents and purposes, it is forever.
Right.
The movie, I've read reviews where the movie says, it's not clear on the breakup, and I'm thinking it's because those people have never been in a breakup that's like that. I can tell you very much that was a breakup. Nothing was said kind of thing.
It's like nothing was said, but everything was said.
Yeah, pretty much. But again, it's also part of a montage where, you have to assume that they had said things beforehand and said things after, whatever. Anyway, if any confusion over whether or not they're still dating is completely eradicated when Nick starts dating a new girl in town, and that's not great, right? Really not great. And she discovers it on Instagram. He's posted a picture of him with this young blonde girl named Clara together, kissing, and it's just like a whole mess. And of course this sends April on another depressive streak and everything. The other main character here is named Ben, played by Luke Spencer Roberts. He is in the unfortunate position of being in the friend zone with both girls. He's described as, I almost cringe hearing it, he's like a brother to me. Ooh, yeah, I know. And it's not like he's necessarily interested, because he's Nick's best friend, and there's nothing that he wants to do more than preserve this friend group, because he's friends with April, he's friends with Clara, He doesn't think April and Clara should get together and, be buddy-buddy. And ironically, that's exactly what happens. A chance encounter at a party where the two know who each other are. Clara says she didn't know that April existed until 2 days before they met at this party. But even so, April decides to get into this friendship, or at least pretend to get into this friendship to try and hurt Nick. And as Ben puts it at one point during this, it's almost like a coming out sequence. Like they're sitting at a bar and it's like they're holding hands and there's like, we got to tell you, we're friends. He's like, wow, you guys are kind of perfect for one another. And, in a lot of ways they are. And the movie explores this 90-day friendship. But in a lot of other respects, obviously, they aren't. There's a point where there's a debate between Ben and Clara over what the definition of jealousy is, and I think he puts it straight out in that the person who has okay, it's too vulgar, but basically whoever is sleeping with Nick is going to make the other one jealous, right? And, it's a very sour predicament, and I'll just ask you, yes or no question here. Does that sound like the basis of a fruitful, a healthy relationship or friendship?
Absolutely not.
Yeah, no, and it isn't. And it also isn't a very strong dramatic cyclone to base a movie around. Don't get me wrong, like I say that's a pretty harsh critique, and I did have a lot of problems with the friendship, especially because we're getting into this new era of teenage romantic comedies where the relationships are based more on a friendship dynamic where they apply the tropes onto a pair of friends and observe that relationship rather than, the male-female dynamic, the boyfriend-girlfriend, that stuff. This movie does try to do that. Obviously, like the most, the best example I can think of was Booksmart, which came out last year. I can't believe that came out last year. It feels like so long ago. But Booksmart was obviously the best example of this, and that followed two girls who had discovered that they wasted their high school career or their high school party time by studying all the time, and then they find out that everybody else who had been partying also did all the studying, and they got into good, if not better, colleges than them. And honestly, like, I can relate to that. I feel that. Anyway, that was a great movie, and I've heard this one described as like the indie version of Booksmart, and I'm like, wait, wasn't Booksmart kind of an indie movie already? Anyway, I had a lot of problems with this central friendship, and let me explain. Whereas Booksmart there was a friendship solidified already, a friendship established and maintained for years, right? And they have this grown connection, right? They have inside jokes, they have patterns and traditions. These two, April and Clara, they get to that level of excitement and love in this friendship, but it is instantly fostered in the sense that, like, they're suddenly talking to each other like they had known each other for life. When in reality, they've only known each other for a few weeks. And beyond that, the reason why they know each other is because of one's ex-boyfriend, right? And the other's current boyfriend. I did not find this relationship totally successful in that sense. Both have very clear triggers. Both have very clear things that make them upset. They decide to make rules about how the friendship is going to go. They're like, okay, we're not going to tell Nick, and we're not going to talk about Nick. And, you're like, oh, how long is that going to last? Right? And going back to the saying things that don't have to be, or saying everything without saying anything. There are hints like, for some reason, April still has the playlist from that relationship, right? And she decides to play it when the two of them go on the beach, and Clara finds out. There's stuff like that. Like, that being said, that doesn't seem like that big of a deal. Honestly, in my relationship, I have a playlist that I don't know if I would delete if we ever broke up. Right, because that play.
Good music is good music.
Exactly, good music is good music. But what's interesting, and before I go back to what I didn't like about the friendship, I will mention what I liked about the film overall. There's this backdrop, like I was saying, like at the start of the review, 89 days until orientation, until the end of everything that they know to be normal, right? And in those circumstances, the movie is able to explore these otherwise petty decisions and annoying tendencies and acts of jealousy as hormonal melodrama. I don't think the summer between high school and college was easy for anybody. Honestly, I can't believe it was almost 3 years ago for me already. And it's like, as these students are packing up their physical belongings, a lot of them are also packing up, the friendships that they're going to keep. You stayed relatively local to where you grew up college-wise. I didn't. I mean, like, I did, but I'm like an hour away, right?
Well, actually, no. I went to Pennsylvania at first. For my first semester.
Oh, right. Whoops. I forgot. I totally forgot that. I'm a terrible friend. But anyway, it's like they're deciding what parts of their old life they're going to keep, and that adds a sort of interesting level of self-aware depth to this movie, because it's like, does any of this really matter? It's like, the movie ends a certain way, but you're kind of like, okay, she's still going to go to Boston. Is this going to matter? When she starts making new friends, is she really going to care about these people anymore? And, like, I don't think that was something that you were supposed to get from this movie. I think, actually, I read this movie very differently than the way it was intended. And that, unfortunately, has to be a critique, because I did think a lot while I was watching this. I did have a lot of observations, especially about the friendship. I thought that Nick's character, as this sort of sinister background to this friendship, I liked that in the sense of the dramatic purpose of the film. That being said, I didn't like it as an unsung characteristic of this friendship, because the movie tries to present the friendship as these two girls are able to foster this thing on their own, and they're able to maintain it, and they're able to have fun with it. And I don't think that worked. It only takes one blow-up scene. It only takes one severe argument over Nick to prove that this friendship really isn't that strong. I like to think we're pretty good friends, right? I don't see you and I getting into one argument and ruining that friendship to the point where we don't talk anymore, right. And like I said earlier, like this movie follows a pattern, like you can even attribute it to John Hughes in some respects, even though, it's obviously taken place in the modern day with social media and vaping and all that nonsense. The defining characteristics of my generation. I love it.
Yeah, something about the vaping really sells it.
Yeah. I don't know if they were vaping or if they were hitting a dab pen. In either case, I will not admit to doing one or either. It's okay. One or both is what I meant to say. I like that. And I also thought, going back to that last point about the vaping and social media, that this movie locks into that cringy aesthetic and that cringy collection of emotions that come with teenagers trying to say goodbye to one another, and I really liked that. That being said, the friendship was not strong enough for me. The movie relies very heavily on the performances, all of which are good, and like it's kind of hard to like. I wouldn't expect anything less. A lot of these actors have been playing teenagers for the last 10 years. You know, like Dylan Sprouse, for instance. Like, it's not surprising to me at all that this is what happened. That the performances are as strong as they are. I had problems with the script. I didn't find the friendship as central or as strong of a central pillar for this movie as I think the writers did. That being said, I also seem to be in the minority in that respect. Whatever. I enjoyed it. Like I said earlier, I read a lot into this movie. I got a lot of emotion from this movie, but I don't think it was what they wanted me to think. And it was honestly sort of distracting thinking, oh, am I reading too deep into this? You know, because it's like filmmakers and screenwriters, you know, lay out events so that, like, obviously, like, they will always say, like, oh no, it's for the audience to decide what it means, right? But I think these, like, the thoughts that I had and the experience I had was too far deviated from what the movie they were trying to tell. Did that make sense?
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah, so that's my main critique of this movie. Again, there's a lot to like here, but you know, if you just let it go if you just go with the flow, ride the wave your own way, you'll probably enjoy it more than I did. I'm gonna give it 3 out of 5 stars.
Still fairly like a pretty positive review though.
Yeah, no, there was a lot that I liked here, but you know, they're just the things that the movie was backing itself on, the things that the movie was advertising itself to be, you know, this sort of book smart level relationship, this sort of women sticking together idea did not work for me.
Gotcha.
But of course, I don't think I'm the target audience in the respect that, you know, like I'm not a female.
You're not gonna watch the movie and be like, "This is so me."
Well, I did see a lot of myself in the Nick and April relationship, so I can't say that. And I also saw a lot of me at the end with the Nick and Ben relationship as well. So, yeah, after we're done with this, I'll tell you how it ends, because you're probably not going to watch this, are you?
Yeah, probably not.
Okay, I'll tell you how it ends, and you'll laugh, and you'll be like, oh yeah, that's so Luke.
Got it.
Because there is stuff in here for, I think, almost anybody.